The second problem we have in ecosystem like Istanbul, France, London, whatever, is that we read way too much TechCrunch. So one problem is that we look at Silicon Valley and we think that Silicon Valley is a model. Silicon Valley is an historical accident that happened for totally no reason. Nobody understands why Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley. If anyone pretends that he understands why Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley, please give me a call. I'm very interested by that. The truth is that most historical phenomena, they happen without real explanation. And the problem we have is that we look at that and we have two kinds of reaction. Reaction number one, we look at it and we found it crazy and we try to understand it with our own rules. Why in Silicon Valley startups are over-evaluated? Because it's the only place where startups are really evaluated. Why people pay way too much for valuation in Silicon Valley? It's because it's a place where they can lose more money than anywhere else. Silicon Valley, on the last 10 years, produced a company that is north of $1 billion valuation every week. Every week. Like in 7 years at the family, we did 3 of them. And that's, I think, the best score in Europe. And it's really, really not a lot. We had to take 400 startups to have 3 of them that are valued more than $1 billion. So you see, the math are not the same, and still we apply the same thing. And why? Because it's an obsession about fundraising. Yesterday, I was on this boat trying to enjoy the view, and I talked with a lot of you, and everyone come and ask me how to fundraise. One of the most funny questions I get always asked. Because the funny question is, why do you think anyone should invest in you? It's like being a child. When I was a child, at the beginning when you're a child, when you're hungry, we give you food. And then one day I told my mom I was hungry and she told me it's not the time to eat. A very traumatized moment of my life. I still remember that feeling to understand that I was not the center of the universe. And with a Lebanese mom, I think it's kind of the same here. You get this feeling to be the center of the world very fast. The problem is that you are not. As an entrepreneur, when you have a plan and you say, I'm going to raise money, you think that people will give you money. It's a very strange assumption. Most of the time, most of you are not going to raise anything, or you are going to raise in really bad condition. And your obsession to raise is an obsession that is based on the fact that the only newsworthy information we get from Silicon Valley are fundraising. All of you kind of think that startup equals fundraising. It's not. So let me explain to you what a startup is about. Startup is about doing something that most of the people don't understand. It's creating something without anything. Every great startup starts by doing an impossible thing, by doing something that kind of blew up imagination, that kind of defy what is commonly understood. If startup was about having a budget and spending that budget better than others, then startup will be a manager game. It will be a game where people with an MBA will win. But obviously people with an MBA struggle in the startup world. And there is a good reason for that, is that startup is about product, market fit, customers. And as an entrepreneur operating an ecosystem where there is not a lot of capital, that is not Silicon Valley, your obsession should not be about getting any money. Your obsession should be about how can you make yourself attractive for worldwide capital. How making yourself so exceptional that nobody will care you are in Istanbul. So that's a funny thing about startup. You know, when I started in Paris in 2013, all my friends from Silicon Valley were telling me, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you doing that? And I said mostly for food and women, but still, I came in Paris because I loved my life in Paris much more than my miserable life in Silicon Valley. And so I did it with one ambition, was to make French startup compatible with American investor. And to do that, you have to do much better startup in France than average startup in America. Silicon Valley ecosystem is an incredible ecosystem, not because bright people succeed. It's an exceptional ecosystem because very average people succeed. What makes Silicon Valley so unique is that people without not much talent, because they are at the right place at the right moment, kind of achieving something great, because there is so much means around. But if you try to play that game from here, you are going to lose, because you will be always evaluated as a startup coming from an environment nobody knows about. Nobody in Silicon Valley wake up and tell himself, oh, what is happening this week in Paris? Or what is happening this week in Istanbul? That question is a question that nobody there asked. And the question we should ask ourselves here is what kind of company we can build that are built with our own rules. And I encourage you about that much more than anything. You should establish your own rules. Being an entrepreneur is not about submission. Being an entrepreneur is not about pleasing investors. Being an entrepreneur is not about trying to do what people expect from you. It's really about doing what is necessary and whatever it takes to go to the next step.